Hey now, we are getting over, and I am the Silver King, Adam Silverstein, here to lead you through these hard times. With episode 679 of your favorite professional wrestling podcast. That's right, Getting Over is back, and it is Thursday, so you know exactly what that means. We are here to break down everything that happened over the last week across NXT and AEW. But not only that, this episode will serve as your 2024 AEW Worlds End Ultimate Preview, the final premium live event or pay-per-view, whichever term you prefer. Both companies use different ones, of the entire year. We are going to get to that in the main event segment, the end of today's show. We have an absolute ton to discuss. And a little surprise for you, vintage Chris Vanini is back on the Thursday show. He will participate in that ultimate preview for World's End, and the expectation is he will be with us for the instant analysis for AEW World's End Saturday night as soon as that show goes off the air. Before we get to him, before we get to that, the Silver King needs to remind you off the top that the Getting Over Wrestling podcast
is all about Defy.
You know the deal. Head over to Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Leave a 5-star rating. Take some extra time. Leave a 5-star written review. If you do, we'll read it live right here on the show. And please also remember,
I happen to love the number 5.
I hope you do as well. $5 a month, $50 for the entire year. You can become an official Getting Over head. Visit buymeacoffee.com/gettingover. Sign up. You will get bonus audio, the fastest 5 minutes in professional wrestling, instant reactions to every major show, all of them inside of 5 minutes, and exclusive news analysis posts every week. Again, that is buymeacoffee.com/gettingover. We would greatly appreciate your financial support. It goes a long way toward keeping this show on the air, and you also get additional content on the back end as well. So really every reason in the world. In fact, I'm going to give it to you one more time. buymeacoffee.com/gettingover. You can subscribe to us on YouTube, by the way, at Getting Overcast, if that is your preferred form of listening. So we are available, all of our episodes on there. And I also wanted to remind you to follow us on Twitter at Getting Overcast and on Blue Sky at Getting Overcast, but for multiple reasons. First, episode drops, news, analysis, highlights, all of that good stuff. Second, you can send in questions and comments for this show. Third, we are currently posting nominees for the 2024 Getting Over Awards, aka the Meaties. Voting for that begins next week. Once we wrap up all the nominees, the ballot will go out. If you follow us on social media, you will have an opportunity to click that link and contribute your vote, which matters immensely when it comes to awarding the Meaties. On social media is also where you can find the link to vote for Getting Over as the wrestling podcast of the year. We won the award last year from the Sports Podcast Awards. We want to go back to back, and the competition has gotten a lot tougher. So if we come out on top of this field, it means even more for the continuation and future of Getting Over. That ballot is pinned to the top of our profile on Twitter at Getting Overcast, on Blue Sky at Getting Over. If you have not voted already, please do so. If you have voted already, you can do so again. I'm just saying. So go ahead, click those ballots, vote as many times as you want. Make sure it's for Getting Over every single time. Now, we do have a ton to get to on today's show. I wanted to remind you off the top, hey, we had a WWE episode this week, and I know it came off late in the afternoon on what was essentially Christmas Eve. So I understand why perhaps not as many of you as normal listen to the show, but it still exists, and you really do need to listen to it before SmackDown this coming Friday, and certainly the final week of WWE television for 2024, going into some huge shows. The January 3rd SmackDown, the January 6th WWE Raw debut on Netflix. So make sure you listen to this week's WWE episode if you have not already. I also wanted to note that we are going to have a little bit of a unique schedule in terms of episode drops coming up here for Getting Over. Not only do we have the 2024 Getting Over Awards, aka the Meaties special edition show, we also have your 2024 year in review, which we have not discussed as much here as we normally do, but there's 5 days left in the year. Silver King's been compiling that for a couple weeks now. That is coming up at the end of today's show. We will provide you with the full episode schedule. And then, of course, we'll do it again pretty much every single episode from now until we get past the 2024 Getting Over Awards, aka the Meaties. As far as today's show goes, we're talking NXT, then AEW, then we're providing you with your AEW Worlds End Ultimate Preview. There are timestamps in the episode description, so you can jump around if necessary, or if you happen to be listening to this on Saturday right before World's End and you just want to hear the Ultimate Preview portion of the show, you can do that. As always, though, I hope you listen to the entire show. So we're kicking it off with NXT. Trick Williams entered to cut a promo in the main event segment with Obafemi and Eddie Thorpe consecutively interrupting before anyone could even get like 5 words out. Thorpe pointed out that his foot was under the rope last week, and Williams was lucky to escape him. Trick said the idea of them being on the same level was a joke. Oba said he was ready for his title match in 2 weeks, but Eddie pointed out he'd have to wait his turn. Femi told Thorpe he failed his people, and Williams just decided to make it a triple threat at New Year's Evil despite the potential consequences. He said the goal was to beat both of them at once and eliminate them as contenders. Oba properly pointed out that Trick was ducking him one-on-one. Then he shut down Eddie like a child when he tried to interrupt him again. Ava came out and she accepted Trick's terms. I expected her to say something else. Like, I think everyone probably felt the same way, but she didn't. Thorpe swung first. Femi completely laid out both of them, with Williams eating a powerbomb and Thorpe escaping at the last moment. Oba then held up the NXT title, and man, did that shit look great on him. This was extremely cut and dry, like a segment you've seen dozens of times before. I thought Ava would come out and do something unique. Like, for example, say, okay, Trick, I'll make this a triple threat, but whoever doesn't take the fall will get a singles title match on the back end at another future event. So we're left with the expectation here that Thorpe takes the fall, with Trick and Oba rematching down the line at Stand and Deliver, or perhaps even Vengeance Day, which would be interesting to do that soon, unless they want to execute like a 2-match series, which is certainly possible between those two guys. I'm glad they mentioned Thorpe's foot being under the rope at the top of this, though that simply would have negated the fall entirely, so his take on it that it meant he should have won, that was incorrect. Perhaps the most positive development coming out of this is that Thorpe actually got real heat from the fans. It's the first time where they've reacted to him in a meaningful way, so that was hugely positive. Roxanne Perez got a promo package recounting her career in NXT and how she's achieved everything that's been put in front of her. She said that made her one of the greatest free agent signings in WWE history. Perez pointed out that she survived some bumps in the road to be the leader of the greatest NXT women's division that's ever existed. She also compared herself to Simone Biles and Caitlin Clark, saying Julia will be the underdog to a woman who's not just younger, but also smaller than her. And all that does is speak to her greatness. Straight up, this was excellent. The best that Roxy has been presented in a while. It is clear that her greatest struggle is emoting while raising her voice on the mic live in front of a crowd. Being allowed to speak in a normal, calm, and clear tone like this, everything she said really hit home. This was exactly what she needed, and when possible, she should get more opportunities like this going forward. You need to have her cut her teeth with promos in front of live crowds, ideally like when she does eventually get called up to the main roster at house shows. Every single week she's cutting promos on TV every single week, and she'll eventually get used to it and she will improve. But there was something about being able to speak in this type of format that completely worked for her character and just her skill set as it stands right now. We've already talked about the fact that, Roxy's not ready for the main roster. As a wrestler, she is in the ring. Absolutely. Personality-wise, promo-wise, she's not there yet, but she's also extremely, extremely young. So when it comes to her and Trick, and I know like people wanted to shove Braun and Mello on the main roster as soon as they possibly could. Those are older guys, and Trick's older too, but they're older, more experienced guys, both of them. Trick and Roxy aren't that. I mean, let me clarify real quick. Roxy's experienced, but she has a ways to go. Trick is not experienced, doesn't have anywhere to go from a personality standpoint. He's all set. In ring, though, he needs to continue working on. So hopefully what WWE does, it presses pause, it hits the brake, and it stops bringing up talent. I'm not saying they've done it a lot. They have done it occasionally, but they stop bringing up talent before it's 100% ready. Neither Roxy nor Trick are 100% of the way there. Breaker, you'll remember I said he needed a heel turn. He needed to figure out how to work as someone other than a champion. He achieved that. He got brought up to the main roster and made a champion almost immediately, but he was working fine without the title on the main roster because he had that experience. Similar types of improvements need to be made with Roxy and Trick. Ethan Page got a promo package saying that Javon Evans is to blame for the attack last week, and the outrage on social media is directed in the wrong place. Page correctly pointed out that Evans sat there and bragged about his great year right to his face and brought up his personal life for no reason whatsoever. Page said Evans brought out the real version of him just like he wanted, and he's proud to have taken his infectious smile from him. Page said he feels no remorse, and breaking Javon's jaw was the highlight of his year. He found his smile by taking Javon's away. I loved the way Page was presented here. Just straight ruthless. This is definitely the type of guy who could go out and win the NXT title again a few months down the line, and it would be completely believable. And hopefully that's what happens because, again, someone who, unlike the people I just mentioned, is 100% ready for the main roster, but he is badly needed still down in NXT. Stephanie Vaquer fought Cora Jade. This opened the show. Technically, Santa Claus opened the show, but this was next out. Relatively basic, but well-executed match. Vaquer hit Eat Defeat and a running Meteora before rolling Jade into her thigh driller. Cora came back with a gut-wrench suplex, only to eat a package backbreaker for the 1-2-3. Not my favorite finisher of Stephanie's, and it needs a name as so many moves in NXT do, but it was a decisive victory for Vaquer and probably Cora's best match since returning. Not a surprise because of who she was competing against. Kalani Jordan, basically wearing a Canadian tuxedo, attacked Jade from behind after the bell with a kendo stick. She landed a number of shots before Vaquer pulled her off. At least she actually swung it this time and landed some thuds, unlike some of that Nia Jax bullshit she was doing previously. Jordan ranted at Vaquer backstage, saying it wasn't her business, and she's on again, off again with Julia. Lola Vice came in trying to calm her down, only for Lonnie to snap at Lola, saying she interfered in all of Jada Parker's matches, so what was it her business? NXT's trying real hard to give Lonnie an edge. It comes across like a college student who's frustrated while studying for finals and throws a fit, turns over the table, throws her papers everywhere, rather than someone who's straight up pissed off. Don't get it twisted. Lonnie is way, way more believable like this than with her normal goody two-shoes, babyface bullshit and her normal cadence of speaking. But it's not like this is a mode she can keep up for the remainder of her career. Plus, what she said about Vaquer and Julia was bullshit. They only fought in a multi-person match. Otherwise, they've been completely cool with one another. So we're just going to have to see how this goes and whether she continues developing along with it. But it's definitely better than what she was doing previously. She's way more interesting than she ever has been in NXT. And if this is just the beginning of the trajectory up, then more power to her. Heritage Cup was on the line. Charlie Dempsey defending against Lexis King. Backstage before the match, William Regal told King he was proud of his continued development over the last month. He asked to corner him again. King was accepting and motivated. So Regal posed a question. Tonight, are you going to do it? And King answered in the affirmative, except when King walked away, Regal pulled out the brass knuckles, saying that was not the question he was asking. I loved that. Regal is the best. Mostly mat wrestling to a stalemate in round one. King maintained a headlock after the bell, which was strange and kind of without explanation. Dempsey went gut-wrench suplex into a single leg crab, but King answered with a super kick and a springing sunset flip cover. He took a German suplex and stretch with a knee in the back, only to get saved by the round 2 bell. Round 3 was completely during commercial without picture-in-picture, which was frankly ridiculous. You're telling us it's a rounds match, and we miss one of the rounds. Imagine if you were watching an NFL game and they just didn't air the second quarter on television. I know it's different. Let's say they didn't air the first 5 minutes of the second quarter. That's the equivalent of this. It was so stupid. King hit a tope suicida style dropkick and Northern Lights suplex before they knocked heads. That gave Regal the opening to put the knucks in King's hand. King again refused, so Regal slugged him over the top of the head. Dempsey grabbed the knucks, and since the referee saw them in his hand, King was named the new Heritage Cup champion via disqualification. And yes, those are real British rounds rules. A title can change via disqualification. That's quite a decision, though, for this referee to make, basically changing the title without seeing what he could only assume in that moment was an illegal move. That said, Regal punching King, that would have been a DQ anyway, so technically it all worked out. The work was nice here. King moves slow, but has continued to improve of late. What's most interesting is going to be the booking from here on out, because this is not a situation where Regal can just extricate himself from the storyline. He's now deeply embedded in it. Do we get a direct and specific acknowledgement that he is Dempsey's father instead of them just winking at it? Do they wind up working together to get the cup back from King? That way Regal can make it right. If you told me 2 months ago that I'd be heavily invested in a Dempsey King storyline for the Heritage Cup, I'm not sure I would have believed you. But this was a deserved moment for Alexis, an interesting bit of booking overall, and I am kind of curious to see the way this plays out. Later backstage, King was pleased that he achieved his first title while remaining a man of integrity who did not take any shortcuts. It was clear the interviewer wanted to ask him about the circumstances of his win. He just kept speaking through and around it. It was just a quick segment to kind of move it forward to next week. I'm not sure King needs to really atone for anything in this spot. He didn't do anything wrong, but certainly a rematch would be a no-brainer. We had Unholy Union against JC Jane and Jasmine Nix. The introduction here was so interesting because Alba Fire and Isla Dawn were brought in with their singles names, but declared by the ring announcer Unholy Union, only for the graphic to just show their regular names. I still don't understand the reluctance to make that their official name. It has to be a trademark issue or something. If that's the case, just come up with another name. Like, I don't understand why no women in this company that are tag teams have tag team names, maybe with the exception of the Meta Girls, but that's not even their name. They're Meta 4. That's just like a nickname that they call themselves, the Meta Girls. So why can't we have named women's tag teams in WWE? I do not understand it. Speaking of, Kaden Carter and Katana Chance were shown in the crowd during the match, with NXT kind of teasing the transfer window as a possibility for them. They're literally both KC in their name. You could call them the KCs. You could come up with something a lot more unique using the letters KNC, and yet they still don't have a tag team name. This drives me out of my mind.
I don't like that.
Then Vic Joseph clarified it might actually be the KCs are there because they're interested in Unholy Union for Raw storyline reasons. Let's hope that's the case. Then the Shotzi trio came out, with Shawn Spears backstage not being fond of that happening for some reason. Nix showed off some new moves, including a perfect plex. Alba got the hot tag, hitting a tornado DDT on Jasmine off of JC's chest, plus a gourd buster. Fatal Influence got into it with the Casey's ringside, so Gigi Dolan pushed Jane off the top rope, with the faces combining for the Gory Bomb flatliner to win. The match was not received well overall by the fans, but they really came alive and popped for the finish. I certainly wish a veteran team, the most recent women's tag team champions, could have just beaten a neophyte in Nix clean, but I guess it wasn't the end of the world that they didn't. At least we got the right winners, and all these women got utilized on TV. I just hope that happens more on the main roster. The Casey's later approached Shotzi's crew, saying they were checking out NXT's badass women's division. The Meta Girls popped in, saying they're the leaders of the entire deal, and it got heated between all of them, leading to an argument, really just moving stuff forward. They're going to do a tag team match next week. Zarya confirmed with Sol Ruka backstage that she meant to save her in their tag team match last week. They agreed that losing to the Meta Girls sucked when Izzy Dame came in, saying she learned that it's better off working alone. Spears and his weirdo crew interrupted, with her shooing them away before leaving herself. Those guys really do come across as creeps, but like not the kind you actually want to see on a wrestling show, just like really creepy dudes. And obviously that's the point. We'll have to see what that group develops into. D'Angelo family commiserated in a completely black room for some reason. They discussed this big tag team opportunity ahead of them before Stax randomly told the story about his mom beating the shit out of a home invader who was dressed as Santa. The gimmick was that they would bash in the heads of their competitors just like his mother did. It ended up as an entertaining segment, though it made no sense why they were in a pitch black room. Out the mud cut what was supposed to be a hard promo, later equating the others in the tag team division to family members at Christmas that you tolerate until you get your disappointing presents, then you just want to get away from them. It was actually a solid promo, all things considered, even if the content was a little weak. There was a funny segment later backstage between NQCC, Tavian Heights, and Miles Bourne talked about what Christmas is normally like. Heights asked Bourne that question, and he replied, quiet. Now, some of the deaf jokes that they do don't land for me. They feel forced, usually. This one got a real chuckle, though. Hank and Tank got their own promo focused on food and drinks around Christmas. Didn't hit for me, but They were supernatural, speaking to and from one another. The promo was effortless, and they do work as a team. I just am not really that interested in them as a team, but if you couldn't tell, given all the Christmas mentions, this was a Christmas chaos, no disqualification match. They hit us over the head with that a little bit too much. So it was the family, OTM, NQCC, Hank, and Tank. Luca Crucifino bowled a strike into Hank's jingle bells. Stacks got put through a table of eggnog and cookies. Bourne hit a great pop-up counter cutter. Lucian Price got wrapped in a bow and beaten with kendo sticks. OTM put NQCC into chairs and double hip-tossed Bourne into a prop table. That was the best spot of the match by far. Tyson DuPont and Tyreek Igwe wound up attacking Hank and Tank as Tony D took a candy cane wrapped crowbar out of his jacket, actually 2 of them. The family obviously used them, then caught Lucian Price with Shatter Machine for a broken fall. Santa revealed himself as Ridge Holland. He took out D'Angelo with Redeemer as OTM did an assisted Alabama Slam to become number 1 contenders. This is nothing that's going to make any year-end lists, but it absolutely was a fun match. The crowd had a blast just watching all the chaos go down. A bit heavy-handed on the Christmas theme stuff, but I suppose it worked out well enough in the end, and they didn't do any of that on the main roster this year. So if you're going to do it, and you're going to put it on NXT and it's going to be fun, then okay, I'll take it. Holland going after D'Angelo and presumably the North American title, it makes sense. The family having a numbers advantage to help Tony retain should ultimately be the booking there. I would call NQCC the MVPs of this once again. The family was solid as well. OTM, I just don't see them as taking the titles off of Fraxium, though they have the size and strength where if something happens in the match and they need to take the titles off Fraxium for a booking reason, it would be believable that they become the champions. Dion Lennox fought Ashanti the Adonis. He wore spray-painted white jean gear with a couple Shawn Michaels-inspired hearts on it. I'm talking about Adonis, obviously. Nikita Lyons came down after a couple minutes. Adonis dominated early, but Lennox got to show off some power moves, including a running power slam. Lyons saved Adonis by putting his foot on the bottom rope. Adonis told Lyons to get lost after that, but when Lennox rolled him over, Adonis reversed it with a really tight cover for the 1-2-3. Adonis then allowed Lyons to raise his arm, and he seemed at least a little bit interested in her after the bell. Longer and better match, actually, than I expected. Plus, there was no D-level acting bullshit. Obviously, the storyline is going to continue. I think Lennox has a really high ceiling, but they gotta make him more than basically Clark Kent, which is pretty much what his gimmick is right now, for him to succeed. And maybe that will come out as this continues. What I will say about this NXT show as a whole, it was a taped show, just as all of WWE's Christmas week shows were. This one by far had the most content, the most excitement, and it developed storylines more than we got from those other shows. And that's another feather in Shawn Michaels' cap when we consider him for the meaty as Booker of the Year. It's a 3-man race pretty much every year, at least recently. Paul Levesque, Shawn Michaels, and of course Tony Khan. But HBK week in, week out, I mean, there's a couple bad NXT episodes this year, very few and far between. I think the highs of WWE are the highest. The consistency of NXT is clearly the best out of the main roster, out of AEW and NXT. I'm not trying to sway votes. I have a feeling I know who's going to win, and I don't think it'll be HBK. But I don't know, man. For a 2-hour taped Christmas show, on Christmas Eve, by the way, I finished watching this, and I was like, all right, yeah, that was some good shit right there. In fact, I have the sound drop that it's so much tougher doing the show solo. You don't have the ability to find the sound drop as you're talking or as the other person is talking.
This is such good shit.
But you pretty much knew what I was going with right there. It was good shit. I enjoyed NXT as I usually do, but for a holiday week show that's taped like this, it really was solid. In fact, it wasn't the only solid taped holiday show because AEW, Collision, and Dynamite, spoiler alert, both hit for me. Now, before we get to that, we're going to hold any ratings conversation until next week for 2 reasons. 1, the Christmas time ratings aren't out yet. They're delayed due to the holiday. But 2, we have an AEW Worlds End Ultimate preview to get to, and that's going to take up a significant portion of the show. So we don't really need to talk about numbers here when we don't really want to talk about numbers that frequently. I will say Collision did a big number on Saturday night, but that was because the college football playoff served as a lead-in, the most watched show or event or whatever you want to call it on TNT, I think since 2001. 8-9 million viewers for that game that directly led in to Collision. So obviously that number was going to be big. That needs to be evaluated less on the overall number, but more on the quarter hours. And I don't have those right now. So ratings talk next week. For now, we're going to move on and talk about AEW. And we're going to kick this off with a general overview about what happened on Collision, Rampage, and Dynamite. But we're going to save a couple of those individual segments that are direct go-home segments for the AEW Worlds End Ultimate Preview, which will be the main event portion of the show. Again, timestamps in the episode description. So if you're listening to this and you just want to jump to all the predictions, picks, and analysis ahead of AEW Worlds End, you need to find the other timestamp, but I hope you listen to both. Now, you've heard me be positive about Collision the last 2 weeks. Well, this Saturday, it marked 3 weeks in a row, and this show was better than either of the other two. Best episode of Collision in the last 6 months at least, maybe longer. Interesting, because Dynamite paled in comparison, apples to apples. There was some good wrestling on that show Wednesday night, Christmas Day Eve. Don't get that twisted, but it lacked immensely as a go-home show. They forced 7 matches into 2 hours, didn't really leave much time for stories, and the main build in particular suffered because of it. By the way, Taz was back on commentary Wednesday, and it came without any dip into the storyline of his being attacked, which was really odd because that's an ongoing feud in the company, and they were in New York. They just ignored it. I think Rampage may have been taped the same night, so perhaps that'll get delved into on Friday. It was weird, though, but holy shit, just having Taz there, commentary was so much better. And Excalibur, I think, taped Collision and Dynamite back-to-back, so he, lost his voice. First of all, he sounded like shit and probably shouldn't have been on commentary. But because he couldn't scream and exclaim and do his normal gimmicks, he was actually better on commentary for Dynamite than usual. So I'm not saying that I want this guy to lose his voice every week, but maybe there is a lesson that can be learned. Less is more when it comes to some of that boisterousness that we normally hear from him. Regarding match relevance this week, it's kind of worthless. There were only 5 non-Continental Classic matches across 5 hours of TV. 3 were relevant, 2 were not. But 2 of the 3 were women's matches that were created with 30-second backstage segments on the prior show. So how relevant are those actually? So really nothing to hang one's hat on in terms of booking. Luckily, the Continental Classic was great. So let's go ahead and break down what happened across Dynamite, Collision, and Rampage. Again, we will save some of it for the AEW Full Gear Ultimate Preview at the end of the show. For some reason, Collision started with Ian Rincaboni, who's the play-by-play guy for Ring of Honor, alongside Big Boom AJ and his son. They did a preview of the show, and they literally said, bring the boom 9 times. No exaggeration, 9 times. And I'm glad that it was 9 times because that means I get to use this.
9 times.
9 times.
9 times.
So the idea was to capitalize, I guess, off of the college football playoff crowd by featuring someone recognizable in this social media guy, the Costco guys. But for me, the best way to do that would have been to either feature 2 former WWE superstars or the match that actually opened the show, Will Ospreay against Ricochet. Get right into some crazy action. I realize the Costco guys are well known and popular, but that was a lot to sit through for someone who may not have been predisposed to watching wrestling in the first place. It looked completely second rate, having them just do their catchphrase 9 times to open the show immediately after the college football playoff. That's one of the reasons I want to look at the quarter hours. I want to see how big was that first quarter, even the first 30, and then what did the rest of the show look like? So that's the negative. The positive is that AEW was running Hammerstein Ballroom. Outside of the awful paint job that whoever owns the building put on it, the place looked fantastic. It is such a great wrestling setup. Limited but passionate crowd that got super loud and was into everything that AEW did. This is exactly what AEW should be doing during this down period when it comes to ratings and attendance. Make the shows look, feel, and sound exciting rather than be cavernous simply to try and fake this big production look and feel. Both Collision and Dynamite benefited because of this. Loved the energy. On Collision, just to wrap up this shit, there was a confrontation segment between Big Boom, AJ, and Chris Jericho. The Kid called him a jackass. Jericho said they go to bodegas, not Costco's in New York, and he knows since he's the king of the city. He randomly mentioned Acclaimed and Bandito as stupid gimmicks, and Anthony Bowens was somehow able to answer in less than 5 seconds, now calling himself the Scissor King. AJ did the boom for like the 12th time, and they all scissored at the end of it. Getting them on the show last month, totally fine. Great even, because it gave AEW a level of social media exposure it had not gotten before. But this shit has now completely jumped the shark. So done with it in every possible way. As far as Jericho Bowens, that's going to happen on Friday, the last Rampage ever. And on that news, I only have this to say.
Off is a direction you can fuck.
Cannot wait to get Rampage out of my life. Let's move to all of the Continental Classic matches. Collision, Ospreay, Ricochet. Tough to say whether it was planted or not, but fans threw toilet paper at Ricochet out of the crowd. Ospreay overacted as that being hysterical. Ospreay obviously did the Superman shit off the jump, but at least they didn't do the whole choreographed sequence again. Ricochet went full heel here to the point that he wiped his ass with the toilet paper, but he wiped his ass back to front, which opens a whole nother level of questions about this person. Ricochet flipped off the crowd after botching a moonsault. The big spot here was Ospreay catching an unnecessary cartwheel by lifting Ricochet onto his shoulders, dropping him down for a Styles Clash false finish. Really cool sequence. Ricochet did an apron Death Valley driver, shooting star press off the apron outside, and a springboard 450 inside. They each hit cutters on the other. Then Ospreay countered the spirit gun with a hidden blade. Commentary felt the need to tell us that fans are chanting AEW as if we didn't have ears. Ricochet purposefully knocked out the referee so he couldn't count after he ate a Stormbreaker. Then he kicked the referee into the ropes that knocked Ospreay down off of them. Then he hit the spirit gun to win. I liked most everything about the match. It really hit until the final couple of minutes. Let me be clear. Ricochet cheating to get the win was necessary for his character. Putting Ospreay at further adversity in the tournament, that was important as well. All of that worked for me. 2 thumbs up on that. But slowing this entire deal down for a toe-to-toe fight, and then that finish, it really took the air out of what was trending to be an exceptional match. Plus, for Ricochet to get a flat 2 after an apron driver, shooting star press, and 450, only to win simply with that shitty fucking finisher is just ridiculous. 4 stars, A-, had a chance to be way higher than that. On Rampage, Brody King beat Commander in 15 minutes. The main event and easily the best match on that show. Commander did his Escalera salute tope and then a sunset flip powerbomb off the ropes, plus a 450 for a false finish. He also did the tightrope moonsault, but failed to shoot the half because of King's size. He couldn't get him over. Brody caught Commander flipping for his finisher and the win. I watched the second half of this on mute. It was way, way better. Commentary was excruciating during this match. 3.75 stars and a B+. On Collision, Daniel Garcia beat Shelton Benjamin in 12 minutes. He won by surprising Benjamin late in the match with, guess what? A flip over jackknife cover, which it seems like is the only way he can beat any opponent who might be slightly more talented or more experienced than him. Super repetitive. I'm glad Garcia won. He's the TNT champion. Benjamin will seemingly be challenging for the title after the tournament, but holy shit, man. Hurt Syndicate attacked immediately after the bell with Mark Briscoe coming out with a chair to save. A dozen security guards held him back for no reason whatsoever. That allowed Swerve Strickland to pop out of the crowd and do a standing swerve stomp like into the middle of the pile of security, which somehow wiped all of them out. It made no sense. It was way less impactful than doing a splash or a crossbody or anything like that. Also, shouldn't he just be going after Lashley? Like, what's he really doing? On Collision, Briscoe beat the Beast Mortos in 12 minutes. Briscoe hit Froggy Bow and Jay Driller to win. Mortos did not get a single win in the tournament. I'm glad Briscoe got a bunch of wins after being fodder last year, but it did seem like this was a spot Mortos could have actually won just so he wasn't a jobber the entire event. On Collision, Claudio Castagnoli beat Darby Allin in 11 minutes. Darby did a dive off a camera platform before they got in the ring. Darby hit coffin drop ringside, so Claudio body slammed him out of the ring and did a swing into the steel steps. Darby countered into a code red, then hit an inverted DDT off the ropes as another counter. Claudio blocked coffin drop with his knees and ultimately used brass knuckles behind the referee's back to win. Match was really good. It was a super cheap out, given how clean this tournament has been. Darby has lost so frequently that taking an L here would not have been a huge issue. particularly given how much he's been selling his back and how much of Claudio's offense had worked directly on the back. So I really did not love the booking of this match, even if the wrestling was fun. On Dynamite, Ospreay beat King in 15 minutes. Ospreay hit Sky Twister ringside early and then picked King up for an awesome Styles clash. Brody came back with his Gonzo Bomb finisher for a false finish, only for Will to get a 1 count on a hidden blade and a false finish on a second to the back of the head. Ospreay then won with Stormbreaker. It was a great match. But just to be clear, the guy who already lost to Ricochet and Claudio in this tournament not only needed 3 of Will's finishers to put him down, he kicked out of the first at 1. The inconsistency with the strength of his booking is maddening. King is one of the best big men in the industry right now. He proved that again here working with Ospreay. I just wish there was more congruence in how he was perceived from one match to the next. Ultimately, Ospreay was the right winner. This was one of my top TV matches of the entire week. 4 stars, A-. On Dynamite, Darby and Ricochet fought to a 20-minute time limit draw. Ricochet did his old 630 senton finisher through a table in the middle of the match. Darby did an avalanche code red followed by a regular one. This got a 2-minute warning during an armbar, and Allen hit coffin drop without enough time to make the cover for the 3 count. Really good match. Both of these guys have been on fire recently. Also enjoyed the draw finish. I thought it was appropriate for these two in this situation. 3.75 stars B+. By virtue of this, Ricochet earned a semifinal spot at Worlds End. There was also a fun spot in this match where Ricochet complained to the referee that Darby was grabbing his hair. Obviously, his ass is bald, so that was just pretty funny. On Dynamite, Commander beat Claudio in 8 minutes. This was his only win of the tournament, and it was well-deserved for him to not get blanked because he just won a title in Ring of Honor. Before the match, Darby whispered something in his ear, presumably giving him a tip about how to beat his rival. The secret was brass knuckles wrapped in Darby's pink fur coat hidden underneath the ring. Commander used them between the ropes and then won with a rope walk shooting star press. I'm not sure the idea of a babyface blatantly cheating without being given reason really worked. Like, Claudio didn't do anything to Commander that I can remember. I think Death Riders attacked all of those baby faces like 2 months ago, and maybe Commander was one of them. But in this moment, there was no reason for him to cheat. But it did capitalize on the knucks being used in the prior match, so at least they tied those two things together. Unfortunately, this really nice moment for Commander was immediately undone when Marina Shafir beat the shit out of him after the bell. We'll come back to that in the Ultimate Preview. On Dynamite, Kazuchika Okada beat Shelton Benjamin in 13 minutes. Earlier backstage, Christopher Daniels banned Hurt Syndicate from the building after what happened on Collision. Well wrestled between two veterans. Okada won with a Rainmaker. Didn't find it particularly exciting, especially given the 2 matches that came before it. Okada also clinched a spot in the semifinal with this win. Okada feigned a middle finger. He actually shook Shelton's hand after the bell. That was really cool. And then he gave him the finger after, which I just thought was funny. On Dynamite, Kyle Fletcher beat Daniel Garcia in 15 minutes to clinch the final semifinal spot. Garcia literally wore a Restore the Feeling t-shirt.
Are you fucking kidding me?
And he did his dance twice as the match started. Garcia's jackknife cover didn't land this time. Fletcher hit 2 boots to the face and a turnbuckle brainbuster that was nearly botched for the win. So Fletcher advanced as well. We'll break down what all of that means in the Ultimate Preview. So moving out of the Continental Classic, Swerve was in the middle of cutting a promo backstage at Dynamite when Ricochet popped in to brag in his face that he was going to World's End. He had this weird cadence to his voice where he kept taking breaths between the phrases that he spoke. Swerve said he wasn't rooting against Ricochet, but for him because they all want AEW to succeed. And he better win, because if not, and he embarrasses him, he'll make it even worse. Why does every fucking upper mid-carder or higher in a storyline have to come back to AEW as a company at some juncture? We get it. You're all fighting the good fight against the big bad Fed. Jesus, why don't you just wrestle and compete against one another to win titles and championships? You don't need to do every single thing for the existence of AEW. As far as Ricochet's gimmick goes, I like him working as a heel in the ring. He's doing a great job. I don't like him when he speaks. And the fact that he's trying to do a specific gimmick on social media, it's kind of disgusting. He's like a mix between that total asshole person and Drake, which is really not a good mix. So nothing has really changed that much. Like him as a wrestler, don't like him as a character, but I like his alignment as a heel, and that's important. On Rampage, Willow Nightingale backstage was excited about the International Women's Cup. Chris Statlander approached her downtrodden, wishing her good luck and then walking off. That was literally the whole segment. 20 seconds, probably kicking off a retcon of this storyline. I'm glad they're going to try to make sense out of it. But they botched this shit so badly that forcing Stat into a face roll and then giving her a second title shot without earning it now comes with her trying to make good with Willow on the back end. Maybe it winds up working. I just don't think it's going to. We'll see. On Rampage, Willow beat Harley Cameron in 7 minutes with Dr. Bomb. The match happened for no reason. Penelope Ford and Harley discussed their breast implants during a pre-match interview. For real. Ford then attacked Nightingale after the bell, with Cameron joining an attack, all for Stat to save. Fans chanted "hug it out," despite literally nothing having happened where Willow should want anything to do with Stat. I could only laugh at this. On Collision, Stat beat Penelope Ford in 9 minutes before the match. Stat did an interview about righting all the wrongs and all of that starting with winning back the TBS title. Shouldn't that be where it ends? You right all your wrongs, you atone for your sins, and then you're in the position mentally to be able and capable of winning back the championship. She said that's where her downward spiral started. So she's going to start with trying to win it, and then that's going to correct everything. No, that's not how it works. Then she challenged Monet for a match. I'll remind you, she beat Willow, so she hasn't been on a downward spiral. She also lost to Mercedes clean 1 month ago. Since then, she's defeated Ford and someone named Tuti Lin. Yet she believes she deserves a rematch without earning it at all. And apparently there's no other women in the entire division who deserve one. Not surprising, because none of them get regular TV time. And when they do, it's not on the way to building up their stature to go ahead and compete for a title.
That is one big pile of shit.
On Rampage, the Don Callis family opened the show with Callis wearing a hat like he was a Dick Tracy villain. And I realize like 75% of you may not get that reference, but if you saw the hat and you know what Dick Tracy is, you'd get it. Kyle Fletcher said he would win the Continental Classic, and Callis talked shit to Powerhouse Hobbs, saying he's not in the same league as Konosuke Takeshita. Callis' gimmick is now that his family is the real 1%. Okay. On Rampage, Hobbs and Mark Davis fought Takeshita and Cage. Hobbs took a nasty bump on a pump handle move from Cage. Takeshita hit a big pump knee and Raging Fire, the name of his Blue Thunder Bomb, for the win. Basically the same match in consecutive weeks with Cage replacing Lance Archer and the winners flipping. Nothing developed or impacted the title match at World's End. Hobbs didn't get a promo at any point, so there was no build for the match other than Callis speaking on behalf of Takeshita. And then Hobbs losing in the match. On Collision, we were told Vendetta is on a hot streak during an interview. They are. Tony Storm intervened, acting like a rookie, starstruck by them being legends. At first, the heels played into her gimmick, but Perazo called it sick shit and challenged her for Dynamite. Storm was excited for the opportunity against Valkyrie. I actually like these two together, Perazo and Taya Valkyrie. I like them together a lot. But suggesting they're on a hot streak when they've done nothing on AEW television is an absolute joke. How about you actually build them up as a pairing and make them matter? Nah, that's too hard. On Dynamite, Storm beat Valkyrie in 7 minutes. She won with an inside cradle. The idea was that it was a rookie escaping with a win over a veteran. That was it. Nothing happened after that. On Collision, Julia Hart, in the typical tape promo style that she does, gave Jamie Hayter plenty of warning to watch her back, or she said she gave her plenty of warning. Then she said she knows Hayter is strong, but she clearly isn't smart. It was okay. Again, I reiterate, this is a no-win storyline for these two women. I hope I improved wrong about that. And lastly, on Rampage, Action Andretti and Leo Rush beat two jobbers in 70 seconds. Private Party entered, only to get attacked by the heels. Then Top Flight entered and did nothing about it. Remember how great the AEW tag team division used to be? Now we're dealing with Andretti, Leo Rush, Top Flight, and Private Party. And no offense to Private Party, but like, they're not great champions and haven't been great champions since winning the titles. They can wrestle fine. All these guys can wrestle fine, but there's nothing else there. What happened to the tag team division? What happened to the trios division? Those titles aren't even spoken about. Neither of them are being defended at AEW Worlds End. The two women's title matches, we'll talk about them in greater detail coming up momentarily. Neither of them have been given any significant type of build to get to them. Yeah, there's storylines going in, but they're not good storylines. So you have the men's division, which is Continental Classic and the World Championship and MJF and Adam Cole. And then you just have other stuff on this card and a lot of stuff that's just not even on this card at all. So let's go ahead, put a pin in that. Welcome in vintage Chris Vanini, and finally get to the AEW Worlds End Ultimate Preview. Chris, welcome to the show. Probably the first time you've been on one of the AEW episodes or participated in an Ultimate Preview for an AEW pay-per-view since the summer, I would guess. Obviously, football, a huge part of both of our lives that is starting to wind down just a bit, and you are here for World's End.
Yeah, what's going on, guys? I think All In or All Out was the last one, but that's right when college football season starts. And then Collision being on Saturdays when I'm working all day, it's really hard to fit that in. I'm usually not watching SmackDown live either, so my catching up time has to go to WWE.
Sure.
But yeah, happy to be back in here with AEW. Yeah.
Well, let's be clear. You've also missed some, WWE premium live event instant analysis shows too. So it's not like you're only skipping out on AEW, but just it's what's happened. And they certainly, especially how late those shows go on Saturday, a lot of the WWE shows happen during the afternoon where you were able to participate. With AEW, it's always at night. It's always late at night. By the time it's over, it's midnight, 12:30, and then there's the scrum afterwards. So some of those instant analysis episodes come out real late, especially during the football season. Is difficult for me, and I'm not even all the way in college football anymore. So I can only imagine how difficult it's been for you to watch this product, but you have caught up. And you are here for the AEW Worlds End Ultimate Preview. For anyone who might be a first-time listener, what we do here is we break down every single match on the card. We discuss any background from Dynamite, Collision, and Rampage as applicable. So, of course, stuff that I have not already mentioned on today's show. And then we give a pick prediction, some analysis, and what our expectations are going forward for the competitors in the match, the storyline, the angle, whatever the case might be. Now, this is an 8-match card, which is nice and compact for AEW. Looks like there's going to be a lot of high-quality wrestling on the show. The matchups certainly lead one to believe that will be the case. Let's see how many matches get added between now and showtime. There have been so many of these AEW shows where we publish the Ultimate Preview and literal hours later or the next morning, 2 more main card matches are announced. And I'm like, what am I supposed to do here? How am I supposed to preview your show if you're not giving me all of your matches on your Go Home Dynamite, which is your biggest episode of television? So I'm not concerned if they add some 0-hour bullshit, okay? I am concerned if they add main card matches that were not announced on Dynamite, but we're not going to know that until we find out what Tony Khan decides to do in the days and time between now and World's End. Of course, we will have your AEW World's End instant analysis once this show goes off the air on Saturday. And I forgot to mention off the top, but we will have a pre-show expectation grade for you at the end of this Ultimate Preview. And of course, a final grade on the instant analysis Saturday night. So let's kick off with the International Championship, which in my opinion is by far the worst built out of any match on this card. Konosuke Takeshita defending against Powerhouse Hobbs. Hobbs obviously wants revenge for Don Callis' family. Forgetting about him, Takeshita's like, okay, I'll fight you. And Callis, circled it so that they could do it on a pay-per-view. There is nowhere near enough momentum or storyline or anything behind Hobbs where a title change would make sense. And Takeshita just recently won the title. So this is the easiest prediction as far as I'm concerned on the entire card. Maybe second easiest. Takeshita retains the International Championship.
Haven't seen much of the build to this, but all I have to do is see who is in the match, and I think I know who's going to win with Takeshita. I do like Hobbs in general, but I don't know what he's been up to.
Love Hobbs. Yeah, no, he just got back. He was injured and finally got back and thrown right into the Callis storyline, which was appropriate. But they've just been doing random tag team matches and not developing him at all. So it's been very frustrating. Women's Championship. I can't believe I'm discussing this so far down on the card, but Mariah May defending her title against Thunder Rosa in a Tijuana street fight on Collision. May talked shit about Rosa's father, who will be in the front row. So Thunder attacked her for about 5 seconds and Mariah just stormed off. It was kind of like when a younger brother or sister, in this case, tries to go after their older sibling, but they just put their hand out and shrug them off and then go on with their day. That said, this did continue in the ringside area where May avoided a chair shot on her hand and security separated them. Then Thunder jumped off the steel steps, but into the ringside area, Mariah was nowhere near her. It was immensely odd. At least security coming out for this made sense, unlike what happened earlier in the show. Both women's matches on this card feel completely thrown together compared to the men's matches we've discussed previously. Rosa is on a winning streak somewhat coming in, but it's spaced out over like a 4 or 5 month span. So there's really been no direct build to this. Also, she's the one challenging, yet she was the one able to choose a stipulation for no reason against a champion where they don't have a heated blood feud or anything like that. So just the whole composition of this to me doesn't make any sense. I'm glad Thunder is back kind of in the main event women's scene just as the challenger for the title. But there's nothing about this feud or storyline, if you want to even call it that, would tell me that she might actually win the championship. Plus, we just had Toni Storm come back. She's not factoring into this. Whether she shows up at the end for some reason, even though she's playing the character that doesn't know about her prior feuds, but when she came back, still showed up opposite Mariah May. Again, I can't even get into all of it. It's so convoluted, but I have Mariah May retaining the women's championship, and I can't imagine this going any other direction.
I will note, this is the only match currently on the card that has a stipulation. Everything else is just straight up wrestling match.
From the standpoint of a hardcore or something like that, yes, that's true.
Yeah, I mean, there's a 4-way, but everything else is just wrestling. So
there's a 4-way, and also the Dynamite Diamond Ring is on the line for MJF and Cole, which is kind of a stipulation. But yes, you're right. You are correct.
So I do think that gives this match an opportunity to stand out.
Yes, I do agree
given
with that.
And you know, we've seen Thunder Rosa in hardcore matches before. And so there's not much build to this. I think Mariah May is winning, but I do think there's a good chance this match, over delivers.
That's a good point, and something I actually missed. Like, hardcore women's matches almost always deliver in AEW, and the talent of the wrestlers in this match, along with the stipulation, means this absolutely could stand out on the card. I just hope Thunder takes one of these matches off from doing the thing where she runs up the table, because she's done that like 2 or 3 in a row. And it's great that she does it, but I don't need to see it every single time. Now let's talk about the Continental Classic, the winner of which will become the new Continental Champion. Now you'll remember AEW changed the formatting this year. Rather than the winner of each league fighting, the top 2 advance, with the league winners facing the runners-up from the other leagues. It's a bit convoluted, but when it was announced, I liked it because it gave us an old-school King of the Ring type situation at World's End, where you don't just have the final, but the semifinals as well, all on the same show. It's what I hoped WWE would do this past year for King and Queen of the Ring, but of course they did not do. The only part of this that remains confusing and silly is that Kazuchika Okada is the reigning champion, yet he technically vacated his title at the start of the tournament without that being said in any way. And theoretically, he could lose in the semifinal and not actually defend the championship against what you would consider to be the number 1 contender. So it's just a little odd that there's a title as part of this tournament, but the tournament itself has hit in a major way. So we're going to talk about the 2 semifinals, and then we'll give a final prediction, of course, at the end of that. The first one, Will Ospreay against Kyle Fletcher. This is the winner of the Blue League, Fletcher, against the runner-up for the Gold League, Ospreay. And obviously, it's the rematch of their showdown earlier this year that Fletcher won. It makes sense for this to end up being a 3 or 4 match series, with the next one happening at Grand Slam in Australia. That makes the predictions slightly tough because we don't know how many matches they're going to do or what order they want the winners to come. Do you want Fletcher winning 2 in a row, then Ospreay getting over him and that being the end of it? Do you want to go 1-1, have a rubber match, maybe someone cheats in the rubber match, and then you do a 4th? It's just very difficult to figure out exactly what they are going to do here. Ospreay has lost enough recently where there's no harm with him taking another L. At the same time, I don't see Fletcher or Ricochet walking out of World's End as the champion. There's no way the Callis family gets 2 of the 3 mid-card titles. It just wouldn't make any sense. So that's either Okada over Fletcher, which, no. Or Ospreay against Okada or Ricochet, which to me makes a lot more sense. You had Fletcher win the league. That's a feather in his cap. You have Ospreay win this match, even the series. Maybe he wins the title. Maybe that title goes on the line in Australia. I have Ospreay over Fletcher in the first semifinal.
I also have Ospreay over Kyle Fletcher here. He is kind of your face of the company guy at this point. Makes sense to at least get him in the final here. Kyle Fletcher. I don't understand why he shaved the hair, because it was such. I know this is kind of old, but I haven't been around to talk AEW for a while. He looks generic. Well, he looked unique with the hair back in the day. Mm-hmm. And now on Dynamite, he looks like Randy Orton.
He does. Yeah. So there's
he's got the shaved head, he's got the arm sleeve. He's just Randy Orton with a necklace essentially right now, which is not a bad thing to be. I mean, he's Randy Orton, but it's not nearly as unique, especially on Dynamite when he's wrestling another bald guy essentially. So they kind of look the same, just he was bigger. So I don't know. I miss the hair.
So that's not. I don't mean this in a negative way. That's not necessarily a unique take in that a lot of people agree with you. He does look very much like Orton. In fact, there's also a guy in NXT right now, Miles Bourne, who similarly has like tattoos on the arm and a really tight haircut, shaved head, whatever you want to call it. They does cutters. Fletcher recently, I think, did a draping DDT like a couple matches ago. So the comparisons to Orton are absolutely there. The reason why he shaved, I mean, you say hair, it was a mop that was on his head. That's what it looked like. The blonde mop on top. Shout out Eminem. The reason he did that was because when he turned heel on Ospreay, he was basically like, I don't want to be compared to you at all. And he felt their hair at that time was similar. So he wanted to shave his head to make sure there was nothing that could compare him to Ospreay anymore. And you could say, okay, both had like long hair, kind of bullish cut. You know, Ospreay has more of a part. Fletcher was more of a mop. But that was the purpose of him doing it, to make sure he differentiated himself as much as he possibly could. So he had a more heel look, and he does look more like a heel this way than he did previously. But do I agree with you that it makes him look more generic and more like Orton? Abso-freaking-lutely.
Yeah, that's a weird, like he looks more like everybody now.
Right.
And also, if you're going to shave the head, if you're going to shave your hair, you got to do it in a hair versus hair match, man. Like
ideally,
you just did it for like a gimmick. Like you got to, it's, you know, that's money shaving the head. And to kind of just do it was, I remember it. I was like, why are we not doing this in a more entertaining way?
Yeah, they just did it. He's just like grabbed the clippers and just did it. Like out of nowhere in the middle of the ring. Now, the other semifinal is Kazuchika Okada against Ricochet. So this is the winner of the Gold League, Ricochet, against the runner-up in the Blue League, Okada, which is interesting because he's the reigning Continental Champion. There's a few different directions they can go here, but what makes the most sense, and what I would also personally prefer, so it works for both, is Okada actually being able to defend his title in the final. Ricochet winning the Gold League, that was enough of a feather in his cap, just like Fletcher winning the blue was enough for him, especially since I just can't see him winning the entire deal, not the way his character is being booked right now, as the heel who thinks he's a babyface but is annoying as shit and no one likes him, that whole deal. That's not the guy that I think needs to be in a final. What's interesting, though, is that you have this big round robin tournament. Again, that's if my prediction hits. You have this big round robin tournament, and the winners of the leagues don't matter. The semifinalists are the ones who end up fighting for the Continental crown. Maybe that's not what happens, but if my prediction does hold and it is Ospreay and Okada, that's what will happen. So I have Okada here. What about you?
Yeah, I mean, it is kind of weird if you're expanding the playoffs, you know, the whole debate around the NFL and college football right now, and a lower team wins. What does that mean for the higher seed and whatever like that? It does kind of devalue it a bit in that sense, but we just had Ricochet Ospreay, didn't we? Like
just had Ricochet, but there's no saying that Ospreay is going to win. But yes, we just had Ricochet and Ospreay.
Yeah.
We've had all the matches. We've had any situation where you have blue versus blue or gold versus gold, you're going to have had it again because they just fought in leagues. Yeah.
But we've got, 3 of the 4 here are heels, right? So we assume
3 of the 4 are heels
making the final.
Yeah.
In Ospreay. So I'm also going Okada because he is the reigning champion and because I think it's a bigger match.
It is a bigger match, yeah.
Than Ricochet, even though you wouldn't actually have any build to it, which is another thing, but I'm going Okada as well.
Also, if you have Ospreay win the title, we'll get to our prediction in a moment. Ricochet has the most recent win over him, so he can actually claim for a title match. He can get that match anyway. So it works for every reason. So I have Ospreay and Okada in the final, obviously. And this is actually a tough call. On its face, you would say Ospreay wins. He's lost enough recently where he needs to take the title. He can actually add some cachet to the Continental crown. It's mostly languished with Okada, if we're being honest. The problem is that the entire Callis family is going to be at this show, and Okada's a heel. The other problem is there's not supposed to be interference or bullshit in these matches. We saw the brass knuckles used twice on the go-home, but that was an individual cheating, not other people coming out and interfering. Then I wonder whether Ospreay should win any title between now and either All in Texas or Forbidden Door, which is going to take place in London. But that's 7 and 8 months from now. If this was a regular match where there could be interference and you could excuse the L, I'd pick Okada. Since it's not, I have Ospreay walking out as the new Continental Champion, going international, Continental, and then at some point in 2025, I would assume it would be in the All in Texas / Forbidden Door range, ultimately becoming the AEW champion. I thought they would save that for All In at Wembley. They're not doing that this year, so he would have to wait an entire other year to win his first AEW title, and I do not think they can wait for that to happen. You do have Jon Moxley's the champion now, and Darby Allin seems like he might be the guy to beat him, but again, it's December. We're talking about July and August. So by the time we get to that, I think Ospreay is going to be in that position. So because of all of that, I have Ospreay winning the Continental Classic and taking the title at World's End.
I am also going Ospreay just on the basis of he's your top babyface, essentially. And based on maybe the picks we're going to have for the AEW World Championship, he's been losing a lot, but on a pay-per-view, you want to give him a win. And yeah, I think Ospreay.
So the TBS title will be on the line. Mercedes Moné defending against Chris Statlander. On Collision, Moné accepted Stat's challenge after her match, saying that she's already beaten her once and she certainly therefore can do it again. And she's a nice person, so she'll put the title on the line. I didn't mind the promo. It was actually one of Mercedes' more natural of late because she didn't have to tell a story or recite any lines. But that speaks to the problem booking this match in the first place. They had a great showdown last month. So AEW just decided to run it back without any legitimate reason, without developing Stat's character, without having her work back from under to earn an opportunity. That's a paradigm of bad booking. A rematch, in theory, is fine, but it needs a reason and it needs some legitimacy. This is just lazy bullshit AEW women's division booking. Both challengers on this show for the women's matches got their matches just because, with hardly any effort put into it. I already explained to you the two people that Stat has beaten between her last title match and her next one with Moné. There's no reason for it. She hasn't changed as a person. In AEW, rematch situations like this usually lead to the over challenger getting the win. You saw it with Swerve and Keith Lee against the Acclaimed, as an example. The fans really wanted Acclaimed to win. They didn't, so AEW rematched it and then put Acclaimed over. I just don't see what booking sense it makes to have Stat be the one to beat Mercedes in this spot. Maybe if Camille returned and interfered, that would make some sense. Perhaps Willow tries to help Stat, but actually costs her inadvertently. It's just that running this match back without legitimate storyline reason, it creates no avenue in which Stat winning would be the right decision, a monumental moment. Right? You want this to be something where this person really struggled and toiled and busted their ass to get back and get another opportunity and overcome this dominant champion, which Mercedes has been since she took over in AEW. And that's just not anything that they're telling us. So because of that, I have Mercedes retaining, but I don't know. Maybe they do something different and have Stat win and Mercedes wins it back. I don't see them doing it.
Right. I'm not ruling it out. I could see it.
I'm not ruling it out. That's a great way to put it. Yeah.
Yeah. And the last match was really good. I think pretty clearly Mercedes' best match in AEW.
Definitely.
But you're right. Like when you take this belt off of Mercedes, it needs to be a big thing.
Right.
A big moment you've built to. Maybe it's, easy to see coming. And this doesn't feel like that. Just over the past month or whatever it was. So I know we keep picking the same things here, but I'm going Mercedes.
No, it's okay. I mean, that's fine. AEW shows have somewhat been predictable. So, but it doesn't mean this one will be. It just feels like someone significant needs to be the one to beat Mercedes. Like Jamie Hayter retconning the terrible booking she's had since she returned. Storm on her way to the AEW Women's Championship. Willow, because she's so immensely over and such a huge babyface. And they had a great match too. So, and Stat would be in that category. It's just the booking hasn't been there. So I don't see how you change this title without the booking being there. With Acclaimed, just to use that example again, when it was Acclaimed and Keith Lee and Swerve, they booked them there, right? They had them say, oh, we were almost there. We came so close to beating you. And I forget all the individual machinations of it, but I remember thinking when they rematched, okay, this is legitimate. They deserve another opportunity. They got it. They won. Also, you had Swerve and Keith Lee kind of breaking apart as a team, and there were issues there. So that made the loss make sense in that situation. Here, Mercedes just took a shit on Camille. She's gone. She's injured, I think. She was at least selling a shoulder or an arm or something. I don't see her coming back. The Willow and Stat thing just restarted, but they're not at odds with one another. Stat did save her, but it wasn't enough to atone for being an absolute asshole to her for months, alongside Stokely Hathaway, who, by the way, has disappeared from AEW television. So I just don't see how you do anything else but Mercedes retain. We'll see if they surprise us. Let's move to MJF against Adam Cole for the Dynamite Diamond Ring. On Collision, MJF came out wearing a Christmas suit, which didn't make sense to me at all because, you know, he's Jewish and he just had a Hanukkah suit the week before. He also had a ton of security with him, none of which actually went into the ring. He pointed out the inherent flaw in their storyline. MJF should be the face. Cole turned on him, and he commented over Cole's body and skin tone and the fact that his dentist isn't seeing him anymore if he has a cavity. For those who don't know, Adam and Britt Baker broke up. MJF said Cole is jealous of him and looks like a crack baby. Cole responded by shooting on his hair transplants, politicking to get MJF's girlfriend a job, and how everyone hates him, saying he just beat MJF to the punch on the turn. So MJF did a whole Colonel Jessup, a few good men. You can't handle the truth. He admitted to the code red. He was going to turn on Cole. And yeah, Cole did beat him to the punch, but he was still going to do it because he's a piece of shit. They came to blows. Cole took out all the security. MJF leveled him. And then Kingdom ran in and saved. What I can say positively about this is that they did the absolute best they possibly could to try and make it work. The storyline is such shit, though, that there was never going to be any saving it all the way. It would have been more impactful as a go-home segment if what they said to one another had not been uttered already multiple times over the last 2 months. It was also very much the typical MJF eye roll promo where he writes a script and he goes for one shock line after another. And then in this case, Cole is like, well, clearly you wrote that and you got all your lines in. And it's just like, you're completely downplaying.
I hate that.
You're downplaying your competitor when you do something like that. It's why the John Cena nice speech thing went over so poorly, because so you have someone pouring their heart out to you. And in this case, MJF's the heel. So it was a little bit better than the alternative. But you have MJF like shitting on you, right? One after another. And you just like dismiss it. You're like, yeah, nothing you said matters to me. So you just wait. Everyone just wasted their time hearing what you just had to say. I can't say I care about this match any more than I did previously, but there's no question the last 2 weeks have been better than the 2 months that preceded them. I'll pause here. I'll let you get in. Clearly you want to talk about this, but man, this just is not hitting the mark. And I don't understand why they went back to this. He stepped on the devil mask. He said, this shit is over. And I thought we were moving on, and they just brought it right back.
That's why I was confused, because I can't speak to the last 2 months, but I was like, it's popped up on YouTube and I watched it on like Sunday or something. I was like, wait, these two are still doing this? It's so old. And look, Adam Cole's constant injuries really kind of messed things up. Going back a year and a half at this point, and that sucks. But it's very AEW to be like, no, we're not changing. We're getting to the end of the story, no matter how long it takes.
Yeah, even though they flipped alignments, MJF was the face and Cole was the heel, and they just flipped it for no reason. Like, we're gonna get to it anyway. Yeah,
and they have to blah blah blah. It's fine. I agree. I really really hate when someone says, oh, your lines you wrote down, like, don't take us out of kayfabe, man. Like, I want to believe that every single promo that I hear is real and off the cuff, even though I know it's not. But like, that's the point. You want us to believe in that. I thought the segment was good. I liked it. I'm ready for these guys to be done with each other, and I think everybody else kind of is at this point. Man, Adam Cole, the last, year and a half, 2 years, it's been rough and not his fault. I mean, with the injuries and just really unfortunate stuff.
Well, I mean, injuries, yes. Booking, terrible. I mean, all of it.
That too. But clearly, I mean, they were the main event of the first All In. There were clearly big plans, and then they had to eject and then come back into it. So it's been tough.
I'll tell you what, he was a big, I know NXT is WWE. I get it. He was a big fish in a small pond that is NXT. And he stood out. And there were concerns. See, people, when he goes to the main roster, it's not going to work. And the longer that he's in AEW, I think those concerns are valid. I like Cole. He's a great promo. He's a really good wrestler. He's put on some incredible matches, both in AEW and in NXT. But the more and more I see of him, when you compare him to the likes of a Jon Moxley or Hangman Page or Will Ospreay and Swerve and all these guys, you're like, that's not the guy. That's not an AEW World Champion.
He feels beaten down.
Yeah,
like it just comes off the screen because of a lot of stuff that he's had to go through.
You're right.
And so it's kind of the story.
The aura's gone. That's the
really.
Great way to put it. Yeah, no, you're right.
Yeah. So I still thought the segment was good and they did the best that they could with it.
Yeah, I'm not going to go ahead and say it was good, but they definitely did the best they could, and it was hype and the crowd was into it, and that's positive. Even if I don't like it, the fact that the crowd was into it, that's hugely positive. So MJF has held this stupid ring since the day it was introduced. Cole already lost a major match to Takeshita last month. MJF is coming off that loss to Ospreay in August, but he won the feud with Garcia when no one believed he should. I'm not sure why you unnecessarily run this story back just to have MJF go over Cole when he's now the heel. If anything, Cole winning the stupid ring gives him something to lord over MJF into the future. But the problem with that is no one seemingly wants this feud to continue. If Cole loses, his comeback looks even more pathetic than it already has been. But don't forget, we haven't seen Roderick Strong since MJF hurt him. Kyle O'Reilly hates Cole for some reason. Kingdom is willing to get Cole's back so blatantly, we've seen them at every turn, that it feels like it might result in a swerve of some kind. Cole should win. I would have him win. But as I said recently when we did our WWE Ultimate Preview and Instant Analysis, I'm moving away from picking what I want and more so picking what I think will happen. And somehow, I feel like MJF wins this match and Cole's retribution is saved for further down the line for some reason. This being the event in which the devil was revealed last year kind of plays into that prediction. So I have MJF retaining the Dynamite Diamond ring, and maybe Kingdom turns on Cole and aligns with him, and we get Cole, Strong, and O'Reilly together, and then it's Kingdom and MJF. I don't know. I have MJF winning this.
I came out of that segment thinking MJF is winning because Cole kind of got the upper hand, and MJF has been the only person to ever hold the diamond ring. I think they call him like a 5-time winner or whatever it is. I don't know how that
he does
totally
technically keep retaining it because he fights the other Battle Royal winners year after year. Yeah.
Yeah. So part of me is like, well, he's not going to give it up. It's part of his gimmick. Part of me is like, Cole this doesn't feel like it for Cole. Like I said, he feels worn down. It doesn't feel like he's coming into this with a lot of momentum, but maybe that means he needs the win.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, maybe it's a win here that rebounds him, and he probably should win for that reason.
He should.
But MJF never loses these things. And so that remains my pick.
Yeah, every time MJF loses, it's in a predictable situation, like to Ospreay in London when he lost the American title, the international title. This just doesn't feel like one of those completely predictable losses. Although last time I thought that was going to happen, he beat Daniel Garcia. So fuck do I know. Let's move to the World Championship. Jon Moxley, Orange Cassidy, Hangman Page, and Jay White in what we will not call a fatal four-way. On Collision, Orange cut a promo saying the other three in the match all know they need to remove Mox from the equation before they can fight over the title. Lacked any shred of believability. During the Death Riders attack on Commander, Orange and Jay both saved to clear the ring. That was until Mox leveled both of them with the briefcase. Hangman came in as Mox was about to cut a promo, hitting a big-time buckshot lariat as the faces finally worked together, looking to be on the same page. Until it came to picking up the briefcase. And that was it. The segment just ended after that. That was the go-home for the main event. Well, perhaps the Continental Classic final will main, but I doubt that, at least. Hangman was later cutting a promo backstage when CD, Christopher Daniels, approached him, saying he was willing to help him at World's End if he needs it. Page shot back that he doesn't need help, but Daniels pointed out that everyone else in the match has a faction or group behind them. Is this guy not an interim, for some reason still, executive vice president and no longer a wrestler? Why is he willing to go out and help someone who's a performer underneath him. Could you imagine if Nick Aldis straight up told Cody, hey man, when you try to finish your story at WrestleMania, if the bloodline attacks, I'll be out there to help you? Like, what the fuck? Keep CD and any of that elite bullshit as far away from this ongoing storyline as you possibly can. And then Dynamite randomly ended with a taped Mox promo saying he would take care of all three guys before they continue their crusade against ego and delusion. He said no one in AEW actually wants it. They all lack will, spirit, and heart. No one is willing to sacrifice. My thought when he finished, what the hell are you blathering about, Mox? In what worlds is his entire gimmick not literally ego and delusion? He's trying really hard to make this work. I just don't think it's working.
Stop trying to make fetch happen. It's not going to happen.
I also still don't know what it is. Like, I've only tangentially been paying attention, but I still don't know what the goal here is other than just to kind of dominate
the goal.
stuff, I guess.
The goal of Mox and the Death Riders, and a lot of people ask this question. People who are watching ask this question, so you shouldn't really be feeling bad about that. His goal is to take all of the underperforming AEW original talents, basically, and make them level up their game. That way the company can thrive and succeed, because otherwise it won't if only people like him can be champion and be successful. And that's why the title is in a briefcase, because it's not about having the hardware. It's about the role of being the champion of AEW, the person who oversees everything. It's very complicated.
That's the other thing, by the way. Your gimmick, your champion's gimmick being you're not going to see the title is an unbelievable way of just kind of like shitting on your company.
But yet you carry the briefcase with the title in it so that you know it's there every single time. It's the same thing. It's almost like painting the title black and saying, okay, I don't want it to be shiny.
Yeah, like it's a really weird concept.
Yeah.
So that doesn't really clear it up at all for me, but I think that's the point. Christopher Daniels, yeah, I don't know about the whole thing. I will say he looked great with the beard. That was a good look for him. Well, is that everything you wanted to say leading into this match?
Yeah, I mean, I can give a prediction first if you prefer me to go first.
So,
but.
like, I love the four people in this match. It feels like a huge deal. It feels like a mega match. It feels like an absolute worthy pay-per-view main event match. These are all guys who have been or should be or will be AEW World Champion. And so I think it's a great combination of folks. It's nice to see Jay White doing things on the top level after years of doing tag team stuff and just being nothing when you're Jay freaking White. So glad that he's in this spot. I'm really excited for this match. My pick is Moxley, because usually in these type of situations, a heel champion will retain.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, seemed like it made the most sense.
Well, the key for me is that none of these guys have been built up to the level where they make sense as the person to beat Mox, nor does it make sense for Mox to go on this crusade, right? Trying to save AEW and level up all the talent in the locker room and make everyone care. It doesn't make sense for him to do that and then not be beaten individually for the title, or have it happen in a situation where he takes finishers from three different guys and then one of them happens to pin him. Orange, look, I know people love him. For me, he should never be AEW champion. He doesn't need it. He honestly doesn't need it, but he also shouldn't be. Hangman already has been and definitely should be again, but again, needs to be a situation where, given his character and he's unhinged and everything that's happening, it almost needs to be like this huge realization moment where he fulfills this destiny and gets the title back, whether it's as a babyface or even as a heel, but it needs to be fulfilling. Jay White, certainly capable of being champion. I would not say he's been built up anywhere near the level where it would make sense for him to be the one to topple Mox and then try to take the title and carry the company on his back in this type of situation. The person they're building up as the one to seemingly beat Mox is Darby Allin. The only other person who would make sense in that role would be Will Ospreay. Neither of those guys are involved in this match right now. And I'm not even saying that I necessarily want Darby to be champion. I'm just saying those are the ones who make sense to end this story involving Mox. I did not mean to use story from the Cody Rhodes standpoint. But therefore, yeah, the only option is Mox winning. And I presume it will come in a situation where There's a flurry of finishers, and it looks like Hangman or Orange is going to get that fall. And then someone throws them off, and then Mox locks him in a bulldog choke or an inside cradle or does something, escapes with the win, runs out of the building with the briefcase, and the faces are left arguing and maybe even fighting each other. Like, that's the way I see this going. And I don't think that's the wrong booking. That's the right booking, Mox retaining the title. I just find myself, when you get into a situation like this, you want to believe that there's a possibility someone in the match, at least one person, can win. And I don't have a belief that anyone in the match other than Mox can win, obviously.
Yeah, I think that's a good way of putting it. Do you think this ends with Moxley winning, Death Riders doing a beatdown, and somebody coming out to make the save, like Darby or something?
Yeah, because Darby's not on the card, and the last pay-per-view, I almost called it a premium live event just by happenstance. The last pay-per-view ended, you'll remember, with Darby hijacking a car and then crashing it and bleeding out of his skull and chasing them out of the arena. So if he did that last time and now he's out of the Continental Classic, he's got nothing to do. They're in New York. I could see him chasing them onto the street and like doing something similar to that again.
Well, no, this is in Orlando.
Oh yeah, sorry. Last year was in New York, and I keep thinking that I could see him chasing them into the streets of Orlando and doing something similar to that end.
This is taking place at UCF's basketball arena.
It is.
Which, if anybody's been on UCF's campus, they have like a little like downtown college town thing that just kind of like was just built there. It would be kind of funny if they ran out on the town there. I tell you this.
It's also interesting. It's also interesting that the football stadium is nicknamed the Bounce House, and yet they have a basketball arena that's not named that. I just find that funny.
I also think I would much rather prefer Orange Cassidy as champion than Darby Allin. Like, I'm not a Darby Allin guy. And I know the company loves him, but he's just not. I would prefer Orange Cassidy. To me, he's much more interesting.
It's interesting because Darby would be better from the standpoint of he's unique and he has a look and there's something interesting about him. He has a story, really good story. Orange is more like if you just want to go viral a little bit. But that part of his career is kind of over. Like, he still does the kicks and the hands in the pockets and some of that shit. But now he's more of just like a regular wrestler. I think the part that made him unique and interesting is over. And also, that's not the type of person I believe should be champion. Like, I can't necessarily think of a exact WWE equivalent right now.
Well, I see like Darby doesn't feel like champion to me either. He's just a guy who just throws himself off of stuff.
Sure,
like,
but with
taking down the Goliath or something.
But with him, you might be able to do a little crossover, and I know it's the same comparison everyone makes. You might be able to do a little bit of Jeff Hardy, with him, where like, oh, he does this crazy stuff and he's the champion, and like, look what this guy's doing. Whereas with Orange, it's just like, oh, he's a casual dude. And it's just like, eh.
Yeah. So like, that's always a comparison. But to me, Jeff Hardy was doing crazy moves as offense. To me, Darby Allin is doing crazy moves to like destroy him.
Well, yeah, that's the criticism of him. Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It doesn't never felt the same.
He did a coffin drop onto his spine in the first 2 minutes of a match a couple weeks ago. And at the beginning of the match, if it factored into the finish, you could say, okay, that's really, really dumb and you shouldn't do it. But okay, it factored into the finish. This was the beginning of the match. And it was just like, why are you potentially paralyzing yourself for stuff like this? So look, also, Darby, there's the whole thing about him climbing Mount Everest, which he wants to do next year. And potentially he could do that. I don't know when that's going to happen. I think early in the year, he could potentially do that as champion, or he could do that and then become champion after that. And then there's a parallel there. So they're trying to do something with him. Again, I don't necessarily know that he's going to win the title.
Tell you what,
I'm just explaining why he makes more sense.
Taking the AEW World Championship to Mount Everest would be like incredible.
He's already said he's going to plant an this whole company above everything else thing for me is just so annoying. But he says he's going to plant an AEW flag at the top of
taking the belt up there is cool. No champion, no professional wrestling champion has ever done that.
Nor ever will after that because they're not stupid enough.
Yeah, that's more unique than a flag.
Yeah. Also, I've said this before. I don't need to drone on about this, but like everyone's like, oh my God, it's the most dangerous thing and whatever. So like, yes, it is super dangerous. I'm not discounting that at all. Okay. But if you're going to do it in the safest way possible, being a guy up there with a camera crew and a billionaire behind you is going to make sure you live. Like you're cutting down. I'm not saying it's no risk. It's still more risk than a lot of other things in life, but you're cutting down the risk factor significantly if you have that kind of financial backing and someone's taping you do it, like things get a lot easier when you have medical attention on call versus a regular human being just going up there, right, with a cell phone. So I just wanted to point that out. I've said it many times before, so I'm not discounting it. I would never do it in a million years. Darby has more balls than me in every possible manner, but I also feel like I'm a lot smarter when it comes to protecting myself. But look, best wishes to Darby on Mount Everest whenever that eventually happens. Chris, that was our full breakdown of AEW Worlds End. Let's move to our pre-show expectation grade. As always, you get the opportunity to go first. And as always, our Getting Overheads on Twitter at Getting Overcast, not Blue Sky. There's no poll function over there. You will have the opportunity to vote and provide your pre-show expectation grade as well as your post-show grade once AEW Worlds End goes off the air. So Chris, what is your expectation for AEW Worlds End?
Going with a B. I think every match on this card should be good wrestling. It's not too long at the moment.
Mm-hmm.
It's not going to go 4 or 5 hours. But I also have every champion retaining. That's not true. I guess technically Okada losing. But have the other champions retaining. And I don't know if there's just any like giant, momentum moments that happen in the show that we're going to remember. So going with the B.
What's your numerical grade on that?
85, right down the middle.
Okay. I'm slightly higher. I'm at an 87, a B+. I believe it's going to be another quite good in-ring show, especially when you consider the Continental Classic matches. MJF and Cole, I presume, will have a good match. The main event 4-way is going to be good. Both women's matches are going to be very good. I just know that's going to be the fact. The point you made, obviously, about one of them being a hardcore match. The show is going to hit from an in-ring standpoint. But how much am I actually going to care about what happens? That is always the question when it comes to AEW. And I cannot predict that until I actually see what goes down. So I feel like giving it a B+, and certainly you giving it a B, huge, ample opportunity to exceed expectations. I mean, from a card standpoint, if they completely deliver to the best of their ability, it could be an A show. Low A, but it could be an A show. That's the ceiling for me. And the floor is, B- or perhaps even a little bit lower than that. But it just depends on the quality of wrestling. So I'm comfortable with an 87 B+. You're at an 85 B. And again, all of you Getting Overheads on Twitter at Getting Overcast will have the opportunity to provide your pre and post-show grades for AEW Worlds End. Now, I told you all we would have a Getting Over publishing schedule update at the end of the show, and that is exactly what I now have for you. So you don't have to write all this down. We'll tweet it out. We'll post it on Blue Sky as well. But I wanted to let you know we are going all in, no pun intended, with podcasts, wrapping up 2024, going into 2025. So this is what is ahead for you. On Saturday, we will have your AEW World's End instant analysis as soon as that show goes off the air. On Monday, December 30th, we will have your WWE episode. We're going to tape it immediately after Raw ends, and we will have that for you. That way you can spend all of New Year's Eve, the day of New Year's Eve, listening to the WWE show. We're not going to make the same mistake that we made with Christmas. On Wednesday, January 1st, we will have your 2024 year in review. We know how much you all love that episode. The Silver King is grinding away to put that together. We'll have it on New Year's Day. Thursday, January 2nd, your NXT and AEW show. Friday, January 3rd, you'll have an instant analysis for WWE SmackDown. You may say, Silver King, why are you doing an episode on Friday that's only covering SmackDown? That's because on Monday, January 6th, it is the Raw debut on Netflix. We saw how positive the reaction was to our instant analysis for WWE Saturday night's main event. And we wanted to make sure we had all the space to deliver to you the Raw on Netflix instant analysis as soon as that show goes off the air. Wednesday, January 8th, your 2024 Getting Over Awards, aka
the Meaties.
And then Thursday, January 9th, your NXT and AEW show. So that is 8 episodes from Saturday the 28th until Thursday, January 9th, all for you, our Getting Overheads. We hope it goes off without a hitch. And as scheduled, but of course, card subject to change. On the way out, allow the Silver King to remind you that the Getting Over Wrestling podcast
It's all about the five.
Head over to Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Leave a 5-star rating on Apple. Take a little extra time. Leave a 5-star written review. If you do, we'll read it live right here on the show. Don't forget,
I happen to love the number 5.
I hope you do as well. $5 a month, $50 for the entire year. You can become an official Getting Overhead. Visit buymeacoffee.com/gettingover. Sign up. You will get the fastest 5 minutes in professional wrestling, instant reaction audio to every major show, exclusive news analysis posts every week. Again, buymeacoffee.com/gettingover. Don't forget to subscribe to us on YouTube at Getting Overcast and follow us on Twitter at Getting Overcast and at Getting Over on Blue Sky for episode drops, news analysis highlights, all of that good stuff. You can vote in our polls for AEW Worlds End. You can vote for nominees for the 2024 Getting Over Awards, aka
The meaties.
you can find the ballot for the 2024 Getting Over Awards, aka
The meaties.
and you can also find pinned to both profiles the ballot to vote for Getting Over as Wrestling Podcast of the Year. We want to go back to back. If you've already voted, do it again. If you haven't voted, make sure you do. At Getting Overcast on Twitter, at Getting Over on Blue Sky. Thank you all for listening to this edition of the Getting Over Wrestling Podcast. For Vintage Chris Vanini, this is the Silver King Adam Silverstein signing off and leaving you with just 3 final words. Bye for now.